The new F1 season is right around the corner with the official testing days starting on Wednesday in Bahrain. Teams can finally test their 2025 challengers in anger around the Bahrain International Circuit and see whether their wind tunnel engineering actually translates onto the circuit. While the timing sheets won't be too indicative at testing, there are a lot of things that can point to a car having the title-winning potential at testing. In today's GPFans Special, we're diving deep into winter testing. But before we start, if you could subscribe to the channel down below, that would be great. We create tons of content just like this every week, so thank you very much in advance. During tests, we as an audience really get a rare peek behind the curtain as teams stress test their new challengers. Most of the development and testing is done behind closed doors, of course. Up until 2009, teams were also allowed to do unlimited testing of their own all season long, but this was stopped as it gave a massive advantage to bigger teams with more resources to spend on more track days. From 2009 onwards, F1 started organizing winter tests where all teams tested at the same track at the same time. It used to be done at the Circuit de Catalunya in Montmeló, right outside of Barcelona. The location was ideal as it was not far from the UK, Italy and Switzerland, which is where all the teams were based back then. Additionally, the track itself was very balanced, offering every type of corner as well as a long back straight. If a car performed well there, it would do well across an entire F1 season. Now F1 travels to Bahrain for the tests. It starts on Wednesday at 7 a.m. if you're in the UK time zone or 1 a.m. Eastern time if you're in the US, with an hour-long lunch break between 11 and 12 UK time or 5 and 6 Eastern time. The afternoon session starts at 12 and ends at 4 p.m. if you're in the UK or from 6 to 10 a.m. if you're on the East Coast of the US. This goes for Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, the 3 days teams are allowed to test. In terms of the climate, it is very agreeable this time of year in Bahrain. The season opener used to be in Bahrain as well, but because of the Ramadan this year, the curtain raiser will now be in Melbourne, as it used to be. One of the questions you might have is, don't teams have filming days and testing of previous cars, those TPC days we've been hearing about? What makes these testing days so special then? Well, each team is allowed a maximum of 2 promotional events per season with current cars. These are so-called filming days, where the car is allowed to do 100 kilometers for each event, so 200 kilometers in total. Besides that, teams are permitted 2 demonstrations per year, but the maximum distance for these is just 15 kilometers. Then we have the TPC, the testing of previous cars. In these, teams are allowed to run cars that are at least 2 years old, so the newest car you can use now is the 2023 Challenger. Each driver can do 1,000 kilometers in these tests, spread across 4 days. During the test, teams always try to keep their cards as close to their proverbial chests as possible. The last thing you want to do, of course, is give away to your rivals an inkling of your outright speed. Because of these tactics, you always have to be wary of teams sandbagging, as it's called, or being slower on purpose. But of course, on the other end of the spectrum, we also have these so-called glory runs. Sometimes a driver wants to top the timing sheet simply and just wants to whack on a qualifying setup and does a flying lap, making them look relatively rapid. Teams also try to throw their rivals off the scent. McLaren, for example, were one of the first teams to show their new challenger, the MCL39, but did so in a camouflaged livery, making it hard to spot any new developments or any new bits and bobs on the car. So, teams hide a lot of things, but what will we see then? Well, expect a lot of aero racks, as they're called, a sort of laundry rack that's mounted on the side of cars. It's a tool for teams to measure airflow, one of the most valuable pieces of data in terms of aerodynamics. Lap times won't be too indicative, as we simply do not know what fuel load each driver is on and what type of testing program each individual car is running. Reliability will, however, be important. If a car is able to do hundreds of laps without issue, this gives the engineers mountains more of valuable data to pore over, something that is absolutely essential to further improve the car. A lot of development will already have been done over the winter, and we should be able to spot innovations all teams have made on their new challengers. This can also be a dummy tactic, however. Maybe a team flaunts a new part for its rivals but won't actually use it during the season. This might sound a bit far-fetched, but it's happened before, believe me. Finally, let's look at the 2024 test results and how they compared to the actual season. At the time, Carlos Sainz was quickest of all, posting a 1:29.921 during the test in his Ferrari. During qualifying for the Bahrain Grand Prix, however, Max Verstappen set the pace with a 1:29.179, so almost 0.8 quicker, and Red Bull had the best race pace as well during that race weekend. Haas put in 441 laps, or about 2,400 kilometers, or 1,500 miles, covering more distance than any other team. Curiously though, McLaren did the second fewest laps that week, but still won the Constructors' title later that year. So, all of that should give you an idea of what goes on during this week's test. If you don't want to miss anything about what happens during those tests, don't forget to subscribe right here and leave a comment with your predictions while you're down there as well. I'll be back later this week with another news video, but thank you very much for watching.